Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Today, instead of Friday Live, we're doing Wednesday Live. And I'm waiting for Maria Esposito from Citizens Bank to join us so we can discuss different case studies during the buying and selling process. Some may be funny, some may be more serious, and we'd like to do a few series on this. Leslie Jones will be joining us next week. She wasn't able to join us today, but we will see her next week on Friday Live. So I'm just waiting for Marie to join us so we could start to discuss and share some of our events from the front lines. So let's just give it another second. And Marie should join us any second. Not sure where she is, but in a moment, sometimes technology is not always perfect. Maria, how are you? We were waiting for you. I said sometimes technology is not always perfect, right?
Yeah.
So today, I
How,
explained that Leslie won't be joining us today because she was busy with clients, but we'll see her again next Friday.
yes.
So today is discussing different case studies or sharing our personal thoughts from the front lines.
Yeah.
And some may be funny, some may be more serious.
Right.
So please, you go first today. Share some experience.
Yeah, sure. Well, actually, I was going to talk about a different one, but then I had one that popped up this morning. So I've been working with a client for a while now, doing pre-approvals. They made an offer on a co-op that was accepted. And but now but then it looked like, how the offer's accepted and then they
Right.
go into due diligence, and now there might be, it looks like somebody else was kind of coming in trying to like squeeze in. And he calls me back, he's like, I think like the only way I'm going to be able to get this property is if I tell them that I will close all cash, like even
Right.
though they verbally accepted my offer, it
Right.
looks like now they're kind of reneging on it. And I said, okay, well, listen, no problem. Well, actually, he has the cash to be able to close. I said, but no problem. You can close all cash, and you, as soon after you close, you can come back and we can do what's called delayed financing.
Right.
It's like, well, what is that? And I said, it's great because it's treated just like a purchase mortgage. So you get the best rates, you get the best terms. It would be just as if we were doing the loan up front for you, but you do it within 180 days of closing. We have to close on the loan. And he's like, I thought I was going to lose this deal. Like, I can't believe I could still kind of have my cake and eat it too, because I want the apartment, but I definitely don't want to put all of my cash into it. I want to finance some of it. So yeah, so that just happened this morning, and hopefully, fingers crossed, he'll still be able to get the apartment.
Well, I hope so for him. And
Right.
it was a good idea what you suggested. So mine's a little bit more serious, and I think it's a good case study because it speaks about business ethics. It speaks about the way as realtors we're supposed to practice. And I'll give you an example. It really stands out in my mind. And whenever I teach real estate, when I teach business ethics through a title company, I always bring this up. And I think it's a good example. I was representing the buyer, and it was during COVID, and we made an offer on a Sunday morning. And I realized, I was working all day probably, and by Sunday evening, I did not hear from the agent. Usually I received and submitted. I received nothing. So I called the agent, the seller's agent. I said, hi, how are you? I said, by the way, I never heard from you. So she said, well, you know, we accepted another offer. I said, did you submit my offer? Did you see my offer? And she was clearly unaware of the details of the offer. So I said, well, how do you know my offer wasn't better than the others that you submitted and accepted? So she was very nervous about what I was saying. I said, listen, if you haven't submitted it, you must by law submit it. and you should have done it in a timely fashion. It turns out she did not submit it. She called me back and she was really quite upset and annoyed, and she hung up on me quickly. I quickly called my client, who was the buyer, and I wasn't able to reach him because it was, I guess, by 8:39 by this time. And I submitted an email to him, and he took it upon himself to call the owner. The next morning, he found out the owner's name, the email, and by 7:30 in the morning, he was told to submit a higher offer, or his best offer, I should say it, and we submitted it directly to the owner. It turns out that by 1 o'clock that afternoon, a contract was drawn to us, inspections were already underway, and he accepted our offer. We found out later that she never submitted our offer because the offer that was approved or was accepted was a friend of hers in another office. So it really shows that you really have to be on top of it. And the way I was taught is to be very pleasantly aggressive. She clearly was not happy. The owner was very happy because he received a very strong offer. And it turns out our original offer that was not improved upon would have also won. So we really have to stay on top of it. It just shows the ethics that are involved in the real estate industry. And in addition, how we really, when we receive an offer, it can't be up to us to submit it or not submit it. It's up to we represent the principal, we represent the seller. So when we list a property. So this is really one case that stands out in my mind. And I feel very strongly about it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think ethics, right, to
Right,
play, like, run the gamut and are so important. First of all, in our everyday lives, but
right,
certainly in our professional lives, and that's a great example of, you know, some of an interested party that's, you know, acting in an unethical way, right, and to the detriment of, you know, the seller that they were representing. You know, staying in that same vein of ethics, I mean, that, you know, one of the things that's really important on the lending side is occupancy. What you know,
right,
what someone states their, you know, their intention is on how they're going to occupy a property. Am I
correct,
going to live in it as my primary residence? Is it going to be a secondary home for me? Or am I buying this purely as an investment, you know, to rent it out? And, you know, oftentimes I will have
right.
clients say to me, like, well, yeah, you know, I'm gonna say that I'm gonna live in it, but really my intention is
Not,
to rent it
right,
out. And like, is that going to be a problem? And I'm like, look, you can only ever pull that trick once with
right,
any lender, right?
right,
Because if your intention is that you know, like, look, if your intention is that you do want to own real estate and you want to develop a portfolio and have investment properties, um, you know, you're that's all looked at, and every lender has access to that. They have access to see if
right,
when you applied for a mortgage, if you applied for it as a primary home or as an
correct,
investment. And that's not to say that, like, life circumstances happen and people change. You know, I've had people that bought homes and a few months later, you know, had to relocate because of their job, right? And
right,
then they rent it out, right? So things like that happen, you know, happen
right,
frequently. But yeah, you have to, you know, think about, I always say, like, don't only ever look at something from just one transaction, right? You always want to think of the long term, right? Your long term for your credit and your ability to be able to borrow in the
right,
future, right? And you don't ever want to do anything that's going to jeopardize
right.
that.
Or it's very fraudulent if you're going to say you're going to, you're deceiving the bank,
Yeah,
really, right? So if you say you're going to uh, live in it, but your intention, assuming you can, let's say it's a
yeah,
condominium, and even then you have to check, right?
yeah,
So if you could rent it out right away, you have to really do your due diligence. But aside from that, if your intention is really to rent it and you just want to say you're going to be an owner occupant because you want to get a better, more favorable
right,
rate, that's really quite deceptive and it's
right.
very
Well,
fraudulent. So how
actually,
many
you,
times can you do that?
yeah, you're right. And by the way, the bank does consider that fraud, and therefore, like, they're never going to lend to you again. So does it?
Correct.
Right,
Not a good
exactly.
position. Yeah, we don't want to go
We don't
down
want to
that
go
road. I mean,
down that
no.
road.
So I think we all have these different, I mean, I was thinking of different case studies. I have so many that I probably could speak about. And I'd like to do as a series over the next few weeks because I think it's really, important to some are
Yeah.
funny, but when I work with the buyer on the buy side or on the seller on the sell side, if I'm getting multiple offers, I really present all the offers and I really let the seller decide. I may review it with them, but it's never about me, right? It's about what's best for them and what's best for them in terms of the price, the occupancy, the terms, what's stronger, and ultimately it's their decision.
Right.
Right. And it's the same with the buyers, right? So if you have a buyer you're working with and they're looking at many properties, clearly you're not allowed to steer. I go over the opportunities or the listings with them, and it's up to them to decide where they want to be. And we review all the necessary documents that's involved in the process. But I think do you have any other case studies? I'm sure you
Oh
have
my
so
gosh.
many,
I mean,
right?
33 years of doing mortgages.
Me
I could
too.
tell stories till I'm blue in the face, but I think it's a good idea over the next few, episodes that we do here, weeks, we'll share some that we think are interesting and that also like other people can relate to, that are relatable as well.
Right. I could think of one fun. It wasn't funny. It turned out it worked out well for everybody. I was listing a house many years ago in New Rochelle, actually. It was a Tudor, and it was a very bad winter. And supposedly, I was told that people lived abroad, but I was supposedly the house was winterized. Well, I guess after a few months, I really don't know. I'm not a plumber, but it may have been de-winterized. I received a call from the a neighbor, and she said, "Michelle, come quick, quick." So I said, "What happened?" She said to me, "The house is frozen." I go, "What do you mean the house is frozen?" There was the entire side of the house was a slab of ice. Somehow, from the street, the water must have backed up, or I don't know how it's done, dewinterized, and the
Right.
entire house froze. I have never seen that before, and we winterized it, and we
Right.
defrosted the house, for lack of
Right.
a better word, and lo and behold, we get a buyer, and to the luck of the seller, it's a good ending.
Right.
The person who bought it came and made an offer, was a contractor. He got a great price. The seller was very lucky because somebody was willing to buy their house with holes all
Wow.
over the ceilings because they had to
I
defrost the house, right?
I thought you were going to tell me that the buyer was, Elsa, the Disney princess from Frozen.
Well, I've never seen that. So it was kind of like a very interesting
Yeah,
case, and it worked out well for everybody. So that's
totally.
kind of, it's not funny, but it was
It's a
kind of
little
an
funny though.
interesting.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was interesting, I have to say, because I've never seen people defrost a house with hair dryers and with big buckets letting
right,
all the water drip from the pipes.
right.
So that's about it for
Crazy.
today, guys.
But yeah, I think that's a fun story to end on.
Yeah, interesting, but it was positive. So
Yeah.
anyway, we wish everybody a good week,
Yep.
and we will see you next
All
Friday.
right. Sounds great.
And have a great weekend. Be
Have
well.
a great week,
Bye
everyone. Bye
bye.
bye.
Bye bye.